Manchester, 1989. The so-called Summer of Love. Three notoriously violent brothers have taken control of the doors to the city's clubs, including the legendary Hacienda, giving them a stranglehold over the drugs trade. And the money, power and prestige are leading Dominic,
set the dog on you,
We've
Desi,
got lots of strong, loyal people around us. We'll always have that.
and Damien Noonan
I know that I'm going to train them hard. They're going to come professionals.
to become one of the UK's most notorious criminal families.
I've got a bigger army than the police. We've got more guns than the police, silly bastards.
This is their story.
Everybody knew who the Noonans were. And it was almost legend when you went to the Hacienda that the Noonans were on the door. They were involved in gang culture, guns, drugs, beatings.
He was the gangster of all gangsters in Greater Manchester. There was never a man like him. And I mean that with all my heart.
Very aggressive, huge man, bear of a man. He said, I was given a contract to take you out.
Well, my mates asked me to whack his field.
Did they?
So, yeah, not very good, are you? The camera.
throw the fucking bags out now!
These are the brothers who end up running Manchester. The Noonan children grow up in poverty in the 60s and 70s in South Manchester.
Dad was a builder and Mom had an interesting past. That side of the family were heavily involved in Irish republicanism. So from the very start, it was clear they were anti-establishment, there were problems with authority, there was problems with the British Army, and this family also was quite dysfunctional.
There were 14 siblings in all, and all of them had names that began with the letter D, which was a reference to Dublin, where their father grew up. Because there were so many of them, they were incredibly poor right from the start.
The family are products of Manchester in decline. The once mighty city has become decayed and poor. For the Noonans, every day is a battle to survive.
They grew up learning how to steal. And as with other family gangs, they were able to protect one another. They were able to be more of an intimidating force within the community and very quickly developed a reputation for being tough and for being ruthless.
Bob Dunbar is a policeman who spends his life on the trail of the Noonans. His first posting is to their neighbourhood, the mean streets of Moss Side and the high-rise tower blocks of Hume.
Lots of books have been written about the social impact of Hume and taking people from substandard terraced streets and putting them effectively into what very quickly became substandard deck access accommodation where they didn't know the neighbours. That will transliterate itself sometimes into quite obnoxious behaviour.
Much of the stress on tenants in Hume is caused by the noise of children who have nowhere to play but the decks or stairs.
But the biggest problem that Manchester police have to deal with now isn't children, it's drugs.
As major drugs like cocaine become more available, the police say they need all the help that they can get.
The report looks with alarm at the growth of drugs abuse. It's not known how many addicts there are, but experts put the figure in excess of 50,000 and growing.
The 80s saw the introduction of hard drugs in larger quantities, following from America, really. I mean, it became a major issue in Moss Side. There were several major dealers, each one of whom had his own bunch of followers and his own, as they called it, territory kind of thing. In a very small part of Manchester, the drug scene was massive.
Into this melting pot come the Noonans. The three brothers, Damien, Desi and Dominic, are taking their first steps into a life of crime. and they start with armed robbery.
I back up there in the van, and as he comes out, I burst out the door and grab him.
What would you say to him?
Follow me, over here now. You, open the fucking door, throw the bags out now, start throwing them out. Quick. You wanna do it? Throw the fucking bags out now! Gets it!
The Noonans were synonymous with violence. It was the family business. They were physically powerful, displayed very little fear. They had no fear of the authorities. They had no fear of prison, and they weren't afraid to be violent.
These were a sophisticated group of criminals, and they were more fully informed than the police officers or indeed the banks. They were sharp, they were smart. Yes, they got convicted for a number of them, but they made their reputation. They probably stole from cash-carrying vans at least 5 or 6 million. That's what the family told me. Extraordinary sums.
But police say they're suffering from shock. Not all the bags in the van contained cash, and some were left behind. But it's believed the robbers knew what they were looking for.
But the future for the Noonans lies away from armed robbery. While parts of South Manchester are rough and crime-ridden, the city centre is fast becoming the party capital of Europe.
This is the Hacienda. You know, it may not look much, but it is the cathedral to house music in Britain.
First opened in 1982, the Hacienda is a converted warehouse, bankrolled by the band New Order and Factory Records.
Life-size picture of Tony Wilson's head inside there.
It was a club of legend, if that's the right phrase. People like Madonna played at the Hacienda in its really early days. And Manchester was always a big music scene, and the Hacienda was one of the places where people would go.
A big nightclub requires even bigger security. The Noonans. With their history of violent crimes, unbeknown to the Hacienda's owners, are the perfect choice to be the doorman.
Massive gigs, because you had probably the most high-profile club in the city, which had a worldwide reputation, and you control the draw of that. You knew that every night it was open, it was going to get really, really busy. I don't think they ever had quiet nights in the Hacienda.
Being in charge of the door at the Hacienda doesn't just mean standing there looking threatening. It's also a gateway into the world of drugs.
The Noonans were smart enough. They followed the crime wave. Wherever the crime was, they followed it.
If you want to make money in the drug trade, then what you really need to do is control a nightclub. Because if you control who goes in and out of a club, you can control who sells drugs within that club.
Now the Noonans are starting to get rich from drugs, all the while outrunning and ridiculing the police.
We're not dinosaurs and we'll never be extinct. No, 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 no.
Manchester's super club, the Hacienda. While the people on the floor are dancing, the men on the door, the Noonan brothers, are making money from running the club's drug trade.
They had pretty much control of the drug scene in Manchester. They could supply drugs pretty much at liberty with a huge degree of security because of the way, the club scene worked. They were violent. The other socials were violent. But by the same token, it was all to further, their business, to get the drugs into the club, to sell the drugs, and make a fortune doing so.
The Noonans are starting to build up their narco empire, a far cry from their days as armed robbers.
You've got a couple of kilos of cocaine which you can carry in a bag. You can make more money from selling that than you could from committing an armed robbery, and you've got more chance of getting away with it than you have if you've gone out in the street and you've worn a mask and left DNA and you've got witnesses everywhere and you've got a burned out vehicle.
Nobody benefited more from the Hacienda than the Noonans. That was such a lucrative business that other drug dealers tried to get their hand in on the business. They were making £50,000 a night from the Hacienda at the height of the Hacienda.
The three Noonan brothers, Damien, Desi and Dominic, are settling into their natural roles at the top of the criminal organisation.
Damien was the UN peacekeeper in Gangland in Manchester and elsewhere. Desmond, he was a hitman, enforcer. He was radical, he was political, he was dangerous. And there was Dominic, and he was charismatic, comedic, bright, sharp, smart, provocative, and entrepreneurial.
Damien is emerging as the most level-headed of the three brothers.
Today, just keep on training. Keep your voice.
Stephen French is a former gangster, once known as the Devil.
Damien was what you call an old-style villain, a peacekeeper, keeping order and a regularness, you're right, to underworld activities. Something that's missing in today's generation of people that are involved in that lifestyle. It was more like a social policeman, also giving back to the community, and that's what he was very well respected for.
Come on, it's a no cafeteria! Come on! Oh, man! Let me down! Oh, I know that we're going to train them hard. They're going to become professionals. Professionals. Keep training you up. Let's see you do a bit as well, son.
Paddy Doherty, a former bare-knuckle fighter, is hanging out with Damien Noonan.
I met Damien years ago. A gentleman, good-looking man, fine man, big man. But a gentleman, but ruthless. When I say ruthless, he had the good side and he had the bad side, which we've all got that. To my eyes, he was a thoroughbred gangster. The best of the best. You can't get any better.
He's a very peaceable, charismatic man. But they all knew if you didn't abide by the rules after the negotiations, then blood would be spilt and someone would pay.
Damien has a terrifying reputation. Damien's big brother, Desi, can be even more menacing.
When I first met Desmond, he came up very aggressive and, swagger, and huge man, bear of a man. He said, I was given a contract to take you out. And I said, oh, were you? Yeah, £50,000. And I said, well, you weren't very good then.
Yeah, my mates asked me to whack you, Phil. Did they? So, yeah. You're not very good, are you? Camera.
He wanted you to give him respect. I demanded respect back, and we kind of treated each other as equals. He was the man who drew everybody in, political, dangerous, a really effective hitman. We know lots of hitmen, but most of them are in jail after 1 or 2 hits.
I'm down to 25 murders. Wow, a load of bollocks, innit?
24, wasn't it, you know?
No, I didn't do 24. And what you call it?
How many was it alleged you did?
Oh, for loads. It's the police have written 20, 30. They reckon I'm behind them. They reckon I'm behind most of the murders in Manchester.
And how are you?
No.
The first thing you felt when you met Desi was quite scared, really. You felt that if he, if a cloud came over the sun, that his mood would change and he'd just be a completely different person than one that you wanted to run from. He was very good at being the ultimate bouncer, in that he had that way of detaching his emotions from his physicality, so he could look at you with these cold, dead eyes and say, "You're not coming in my club," and you'd know that you weren't going to argue about that.
By the late 1980s, the Hacienda is the most popular night spot in Manchester. But the club is also having problems with gangs and fights.
And I see a lot of clubs not even have bouncers on the door, right? And I'm thinking, well, we've got 25 at the Hacienda, doing 15 Alsatians. I don't know, it's just part of Manchester, but maybe that's what gave it its specialty. People would come here and they'd be scared to death and excited at the same time, and it gave it an edge. The Hacienda had an edge that no other club will ever have.
The Noonans were running the Hacienda and starting to make a lot of money out of the drug trade there. And lots of other people came along to try and challenge them, especially to try and get their own dealers inside the Hacienda.
One gang is pushing too hard to take over the Hacienda. The Noonans want to send them a brutal message.
Dominic went over to a pub where this particular gang ran their operation. And he went in, and they had a dog there, and he cut off the dog's head with a machete.
Just chopped its head off and carried it inside the pub and put it on the pool table. More or less told them and asked them to stay away from the Hacienda, or the next time it'd be a human head. And they never came back.
It's a ruthless statement of intent.
Lots of other people came along to try and challenge them. White Tony was the street name of the leader of the Cheetham Hill gang, and they were never on good terms with the Noonans or many of the other gangs in Manchester.
What happened to White Tony was that there was an argument between the Noonans over the proceeds of a crime that had been done, a security van that had netted them around £360,000, and the way that that cash had been divided up. White Tony was driving past the Penny Black pub in Cheetham Hill and was flagged down into a car park. A taxi pulled in behind White Tony's car.
As soon as I heard there was a shooting outside the Penny Black, I had a pretty good idea that it would be him. And of course, it was later confirmed it was Tony Johnson. Desi was arrested for the murder.
Desi's arrest is the first big breakthrough for the police in their lengthy operation to bring down the Noonans. But the case falls apart when it all comes to court.
He had very, very strong alibis who came forward and said at the time of the murder, he was elsewhere. So if you can cast any doubt into the jury's mind that maybe he might have been elsewhere, then it's for the jury to acquit in that instance. So, yeah, he was acquitted of the murder of White Tony Johnson.
The first trial collapsed amid rumours of jury tampering. The suggestion was that jurors had been paid off, so they didn't show up for the trial, and that witnesses decided that they didn't want to give evidence. And the second trial resulted in acquittals.
After the killing of White Tony and the failure of the prosecutors to secure any convictions, the Noonans now reign unopposed at the top of the criminal pile in Manchester.
It was this one incident, the death of White Tony, that consolidated the Noonans' reputation in Manchester. Because White Tony, their problem man, was then out of the network, They were able to expand their empire, and they were able to bring cocaine, weed, heroin, and guns all under one network of families and gangs. And by bringing all that under one umbrella, they managed to really put Manchester on the map in terms of its power and its influence and the control, the distributions of drugs and weapons.
But the murder is also sparking police interest in the family. And the Noonans now have to contend with increased public attention and redoubled police surveillance.
Lots of strong, loyal people around us. We'll always have that. You know, if they think they can just take one of us out and it's over, then they're silly fucking people. Very silly people.
It's the 1990s, and the notorious Noonan family are now top of the criminal tree. Millions of pounds are being spent on drugs in Manchester, and the Noonans are reaping the rewards. But there's an alarming new trend in Manchester. Gun-related crime is on the rise. And this has shone a spotlight onto gangs like the Noonans.
The drug dealer's armoury seized in raids on Moss Side. Old army pistols can be bought on the streets at £50 a time. Automatic weapons like Uzi submachine guns are available to the drug dealers for just £300.
The situation even leads to the media renaming the city Gunchester.
A drugs war, feasting like a parasite here, is thought to have claimed at least 8 lives in Moss Side's crime wave.
I was shot at the back of a club. Oh, as a result of that, I used to wear a bulletproof vest. I don't care if it was a wine bar, I don't care if it was a posh joint, I'd wear a bulletproof vest. Manchester's a very vibrant city. People see the shops, people see the football, like Manchester United, Manchester City, but the city has, and always will, have a violent underbelly.
Most people here on Moss Side have never seen a gun, but in the twisted logic of the drug-dealing gangs who claim this area as their own, violence means respect.
After the high-profile killing of rival gang leader White Tony Johnson, the Noonans have been singled out as targets by the police. Martin Harding is now working in an armed and specialised police unit, trying to bring the brothers to justice.
The whole gang were surveillance conscious. The nature of their work meant there was always a threat that they were being surveilled by, police teams. They were conscious of police methods, they were conscious of police tactics.
Dominic was #1 on Greater Manchester Police's shit list, right? He was their #1 target. I think he enjoyed it. I think he enjoyed the cat and mouse with the police. I think he enjoyed the notoriety of it, and I think he enjoyed the attention, the media attention that came with it.
Now the Noonans are being watched 24 hours a day. But they're adept at outfoxing the law.
I think it was rumoured the police spent about £1 million surveilling Dominic, which is a hell of a lot of money, and they didn't even get in with even a parking ticket. If you're going out and you're committing crime, right, you don't have your mobile phone on you that's banging off cell sites left, right and centre that can locate you. We travel in convoy and we'd use radios because you can't, unless you know the frequency that we was on, you haven't got a clue. If you're committing crime, you've got to be forensically and digitally aware. You've got to factor in the seat of law enforcement when you were doing what you were doing.
The Noonans do sometimes get caught, but even then, the family are canny when it comes to the courtroom.
What also defined the Noonans, both Desmond and Dominic, was their court craft. So they would never give testimony. They'd never speak to a policeman. They'd never ever grass on anybody. But come the day of the court, unusually, they would come and give evidence. And their evidence would be literally crafted within an inch of its life and would always, seek to just expose that tiny little bit of doubt.
Do you think he convinced the jury you weren't there?
You've only got to put doubt in one mind.
Dominic managed and manicured every single moment, every time he's in court, sometimes weeks on end, with that particular jury, and he normally succeeded.
Another victory, another moving set off, and I'm coming home.
It's 1995. Manchester is going mainstream. Its music is scoring the soundtrack to the decade. Its rock stars partying with the powerful. Meanwhile, its biggest criminal family, the Noonans, are expanding their multi-million-pound narco empire.
Manchester is geographically brilliantly placed, right, to negotiate and to manage and to liaise and to create business partners up in Glasgow, down in London with their crime gangs, Coventry, Derby, Nottingham, and of course Liverpool. And the Noonans were connected with everybody. And if you wanted to do business in Manchester, you'd have to manage through the Noonans. So they were a very powerful force, very respected throughout the country.
With their greater reach and expanded operations, the Noonans are making money. Lots of it.
A lot of people mightn't give the Noonans the power and the kind of weight of other crime dynasties, but they're not really looking at the legacy and impact of them. We know they earned £4 million from bank robberies. Where is that money? People say, when telecommunications and mobile phones were getting out, they've invested in a number of very small telecom companies, which have now blossomed and bloomed into stock exchange companies worth up to 100 million last time I looked. So their entrepreneurial skill was obviously hidden in the background.
The Noonans are becoming one of the richest and most notorious crime families in the UK. From time to time, Damien, Desi, and Dominic all do spells behind bars, but these hardened gangsters don't really care.
Eight witnesses have decided to leave the country. All of them have left the country. That has been confirmed by the courts. They must have had a tour package, must have got a cheap deal. More gold, the cheaper it is, isn't it?
I think when you're a career criminal and you're involved in those kind of activities, you know that you might get away with it 9 times out of 10, but that every now and then you're going to get caught, and it's just an occupational hazard. It's like if you drive enough, you're going to get a speeding ticket, and if you commit enough crime, you're going to go to prison occasionally.
Out of prison, the Noonans set themselves up as community leaders in South Manchester.
Go to a lady's house who just phoned me to say that her husband's been tapped with an hammer. And the guy who's done it is also threatened to burn the house down. With the kids in it. This one.
Dominic Noonan in particular was very much seen as a Robin Hood figure within the community. I think they had all taken lessons from the likes of Pablo Escobar, where you realise that you can be a very successful gangster and make a lot of money, and if you put some of the money you're making back into the community, then that community will protect you to a degree.
Getting threatened to torch the house with the kids.
What do you want me to do?
I don't know, have a word or...
I'll just basically tell them to stay away.
Yeah.
Dominic was contacted to be like a sort of community policing, if you will. Like, he'd turn up, he'd mediate between people, he tried to sort people's problems out, and it went a long way within the community. He didn't want paying for his time, he was happy with a cooked breakfast. He loves his food, he loved his food, he loved his breakfast, so it'd go a long way with him because he understands that money's tight on the estates.
They started their own community police station. They put up a sign, they hired the building, and they offering security policing to the community. They offered safes, they held passports, they offered cash-carrying facilities. They collected money from pubs and they brought it to other pubs and to banks.
Building cages here. One man will remain in the back of the van. One man gets out, we'll lift up the shutters, drop the money in or out, put it down. We're offering a cheaper service because I think security car and Group 4 are too expensive.
The Noonans enjoy being seen as community figures. Behind the scenes, the brothers are known for being horrifically violent. Dominic has spent over half his life behind bars, while Desi once batters 2 brothers so badly at the Hacienda that one witness describes him as acting like a psycho.
I'm a Catholic. I don't believe in life for the life. I don't believe in taking life.
July 2004. Out of the blue, Dominic Noonan gets a call from the Caribbean, where his brother, Damien, is on holiday. A call that's going to change the fate of the Noonans' narco empire.
The big turning point for the family was the death of Damien.
He was on holiday with his family in the Dominican Republic and died in a motorcycle accident.
Damien, who was the smart, the peacekeeper, in order to maintain the peace between 2 or 3 criminal gangs feeding drugs into the multi-million-pound drug supply in Manchester, he would take a proportion of the profits. So when Damien died, really that intellectual force was gone. That uber respect, because everybody respected him, that was when the tide turned.
Behind the scenes, people are already questioning how Damien's death will affect the family's influence.
Desi kind of moved up to be the main man, and Dominic became his main deputy. Perhaps if Damien had lived, then things might have worked out differently for the family, and that there might have been a slightly calmer head prevailing over the businesses they were running.
The minute he got buried, the minute he went down in the clay, God rest his soul, it changed automatic. They weren't half as powerful what they thought they were. See, when you cut the king's head off, the body falls. Well, the king is gone now. In the Noonan's world, there was only one Noonan. He was the daddy. He was the gangster of all gangsters in Greater Manchester. There was never a man like him. And I mean that with all my heart. And Desi pulled his name down. That was his downfall. You know what I mean now?
Desmond Desi Noonan now becomes the head of the family. But there's a problem. Desi has been flouting one of the cardinal rules of being a drug dealer. Don't get high on your own supply.
Totally gone off the rails. He's on drugs. It's a shame, really. He has such a big name. His name's shit.
He'd already showed a propensity for drink, and he slipped into a crack cocaine and alcohol addiction that left a very violent man quite unstable. In fact, at one stage, his brother Dominic put the word out that anyone who sold Desi crack cocaine would be taken out into the street and beaten. So nobody would deal their crack to Desi, but if Desi found out that you might be selling crack cocaine or heroin, then he would go around to your house, he would kick your door in, and you would give him all your money and all your drugs.
In just a few turbulent months, the Noonan family has changed from a prosperous and professional organisation to a chaotic crew run by a drug addict. But there is an event that will propel the Noonans into even more turmoil. A killing that will tear the family apart and send shockwaves through the streets of Manchester.
He's finished. He knows he's finished. That's just life.
Desmond Desi Noonan, the head of a notorious crime family, is caught in the maelstrom of addiction to alcohol and crack cocaine. The gangster boss is so desperate for a fix that he disappears in South Manchester in search of his favourite drug.
Desi had been on an all-day drinking binge. He'd left his pub over in Northern Dun. There'd been karaoke on that evening, and he'd had a skinful, and he wanted some rock.
Desi's frantic search for crack cocaine leads into the house of a dealer, Derek McDuffus.
This man monster, this guy with hands like shovels, and he penetrated all the way through to his vital organs.
Desi crawled away from the doorstep and phoned his wife, told his wife what had happened, and he later died from his injuries. And that was the sad, brutal end of Desi Noonan.
Late on Friday night, police and paramedics were called to Merseybank Avenue in Charlton, where they found Desmond Noonan lying with 2 stab wounds to his abdomen.
He'd been trying to buy crack cocaine from Derek McDuffus when McDuffus stabbed him.
Desi Noonan's dead. McDuffus will spend the rest of his, or I should say, a great deal of the better part of his life behind bars.
I went to the scene where that happened. Within minutes I found out who'd done it. His history. He's finished. He knows he's finished. It's just life.
Father of mercies, we commend our brother Desmond in the sure and certain hope that together with all who have died in Christ.
In less than 8 months, the Noonan family has been torn apart. First, Damien Noonan's death on a motorcycle on holiday, and now Desi, stabbed by a crack dealer and left to die in the street in South Manchester.
There was no doubting his status. Desmond Noonan was one of Britain's most notorious criminals. His funeral full of the pomp and ceremony that goes with that job title. The mourners, dozens of large men in black suits. The police kept a low profile today. Noonan's own unofficial police force were in charge.
We didn't go to the funeral because obviously that would raise tensions and quite possibly cause even more of a ruckus. So we had lots of people on standby because the potential was there for there to be quite a violent outbreak.
His family and friends had pulled out all the stops, a grand finale, vital for maintaining the folklore of Noonan as the lovable rogue.
Dominic was not of the same ilk as Desi and Damien. He didn't have the same physique, he didn't have the same reputation for violence, and Dominic seemed to trade more on the family name than you know, what he could do himself. So when Desi and Damien were no longer there, the family lost a lot of its power, a lot of its presence.
And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
There was a sense with Dominic was that he certainly was badly hit by the death of Desmond. He became reckless, and it seemed to me that the anchor that Desmond had been, and particularly the steely arm embrace that the family had, which was given really by Damien, that was all gone, and he was a man at sea.
For several years, a dark secret about Dominic Noonan has been swirling around the community in South Manchester. Now, with both brothers dead, the secret is bubbling to the surface and threatening to destroy this criminal dynasty. Dominic is still trying to carry on as normal, running the Noonan's drugs and nightclub security empire.
Paddy, I'm under a lot of stress, yeah? All right then. Not as much as me, Paddy. You're not expecting 20 years next week, are you? Hey, right then. Fucking prick.
I've worked for certain gangsters in Manchester that have been murdered, shot dead and stuff like that. I'm just fascinated by the person, to be honest with you. He's very interesting, he's very colourful, he's lived a very colourful life. He's got an aura around him that is very fun-loving, he's very, like, his one-liners are second to none. He's got a very good sense of humour.
Probably, yeah, it's fucking jury. They want to know where the payment is. Hello?
Strict, I'd say strict. He liked us in suits and stuff like that to carry ourselves a certain way.
Hey, you're pissing me off. Move out of the way, will you? Just keep your fucking noise down, or you'll be moving. Shut up. Shut up, I'll send someone out, I'll beat you up in a minute.
Dominic was fully aware at this stage of people's view of crime families and the Mafia, and he stole these stories. He stole his ill-fitting Italian clothes. He stole his swagger, often from the movies that they watched. It was a mix between Get Carter and The Godfather, and that's what Dominic thought of himself as, and that's how they acted, and that's how sometimes people perceive them.
This is the undercover unit.
After his brother's deaths, Dominic Noonan is reveling in his role as celebrity gangster. He continues to go in and out of prison for a variety of crimes, but the dark secret that follows him is refusing to go away.
The Noonans became so weak, and Dominic himself became so weak, that eventually, he couldn't hold back the this kind of weight of allegations.
In 2018, the secret at the heart of the Noonan family is finally brought out into the open. Manchester police charge and successfully prosecute Dominic for being a predatory sexual offender. Dominic is convicted of 13 sex offences and jailed for 11 years.
The difference between Dominic Noonan and lots of other sex offenders is that rather than the threat of humiliation or embarrassment about going to the police, is that there was a genuine fear if you went to the police, you'd end up dead. And that was the threat I'm sure Dominic gave out.
The conviction of Dominic Noonan for historic sex offences marks the end of the road for the three brothers, who at their peak ruled much of Manchester. A turbulent dynasty, the likes of which we are unlikely to see again.